Hello, friends. Today I am joined by Abby Stone, who is a Charlotte Mason-inspired homeschooling mom of 5. Born in Chicago and raised in Miami, Abby currently lives in a small Florida beach town with her husband and children, who love all things sunshine and sand. Abby has a passion for sharing authentic motherhood on her YouTube channel, Rooted in Rest, where she hopes to encourage mothers in their journey as home educators. Abby, I am delighted to have you here today. Could you start by telling us a little bit more about yourself, your family, and how you guys got started homeschooling?
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I've been looking forward to this. You basically covered most of my personal life there. If we're not here at home homeschooling or at the dance studio, which is where my second home is for my daughters, we are usually at the beach or somewhere outside. But that is actually a passion that has grown because of homeschooling. So that wasn't always necessarily a part of our family culture until nature study entered the picture. So I always like to mention that because I think if you hear that somebody's outdoorsy, you're like, oh, we're not the same person. But it really grew because of homeschooling. And so I just like to share that I have also reclaimed that part of my own education. So we are entering our 12th year of homeschooling, I believe. If you count preschool, which I do, because preschool is tough sometimes when you're trying to get 3-year-olds to hold pencils and all that jazz. So it's about our 12th year. We have our oldest is a freshman in high school this year, which is wild. So our oldest is a daughter, and then we have 2 boys back to back. We have an entering 7th grade son and a 4th grade son. And then we also have a 1st grade daughter and a little toddler running around here who keeps us on our toes. And when we started our home education journey, it was really because we had signed our oldest up for the local private school for preschool, because that's what you do is you put them into preschool and that's where it begins. Now it's not kindergarten anymore, right? And so we were just doing what we thought was right for our family. And we paid the enrollment fee and everything. And then I took her school supply shopping and I just put the little backpack on her and I was like, I can't do it. Something in me all of a sudden was just like, and I can't. And I hadn't considered home education before that, but I had that little, part of my heart that knew I didn't have to do this for preschool. So I could wait till kindergarten. Maybe I could teach her letter sounds at home and have her home for a couple more years. And so I told my husband, I really don't want to send her. I don't know if I can do this. She's so little. That backpack is so big. And can we please just try to do this at home? Preschool at home. I'm sure someone out there has done this before. And he was like, well, I mean, I guess it's just preschool. So if all else fails, there's pre-K 4 next year kind of a thing. And by the end of that first year, our whole family had just adapted to the model of home education. And we were just so much happier as a family unit. And we never looked back. It was a good first year. I know there are usually a lot of struggles through that first year, especially if you have background in school and you bring your kids home, and that can be a tough first year. But we had a great first year because it just felt like an extension of my motherhood. I hadn't ever sent my kids to school, so it just felt like our same rhythms and routines, but we were adding in some colors and letters and shapes, and we never looked back. So coincidentally, she will be on the varsity cheerleading team this year for that private school, but we're still homeschooling. So she did make her way back there somehow. We've come full circle, but I couldn't put the backpack on her. I couldn't do it. And thankfully, thank the Lord, we had some flexibility in time. And so I didn't feel pressured to kind of go against my gut feeling.
I love hearing that story. And I love how you said it was sort of an extension of your motherhood. Like it felt like a natural kind of progression in those early years and a kind of an extension of what you were already doing, this discipling,
Yeah.
this like mothering that you were already doing. And I hope that's an encouragement to someone who's maybe like scared or thinking about homeschooling and it feels overwhelming and they go on the internet and there's like all of the steps and the to-dos that they suddenly think they have to do. And you just really don't, especially in those early years. You have time. And I feel like if you've been able to figure out potty training, you can figure out anything.
100%. I think that like those earliest years are the harder ones. And it just really, to me, it's gotten easier from there. Like you think when you start homeschooling, like, oh, if we're struggling with letter sounds, how am I ever going to be able to do middle or high school? And it's like, no, teaching these little, I've heard the phrase unpracticed humans, teaching these little unpracticed humans how to do things in order. It's harder than, getting a rhythm going and continuing on down the road. So those preschool years they can be tough, but yeah, if you're already doing bedtime routines and potty training, you are equipped. You've got it.
Definitely. Well, one of the things you said right at the beginning is kind of interesting because you said that you weren't naturally an outdoorsy person or weren't already sort of an outdoor person, but you have grown through the process of homeschooling. And now this is something that's a big part of your family life. And so I'm wondering like if there are other ways where your approach to home education or your thoughts about like philosophy of education in general have kind of grown and changed over the years.
Yes, I did that typical thing that most everyone does, which is brought a classroom into my home. We had the primary colored posters on the walls and we had a schedule and we said the pledge and we did all the things. And after 6 weeks, like I had no consistency with all of that anyway, so it didn't quite fit our personalities right from the get-go. But from those early years when I thought it was all about the curriculum and all about the schedule and, just keeping 8 a.m. to 3 p.m., we have definitely grown as a whole family in our expectations and in what we consider to be worthy, education. I found the Charlotte Mason method fairly early on, and it made so much sense to me. It felt most natural to the way we were already doing life. I definitely was a big believer in faith and family culture being a building block of personhood, as well as good habits and good self-discipline and routines. Those were all things that have served me well in my life. And so that made so much sense and just gave me so much relief that those two things in themselves made up 2/3 of a child's education according to the philosophy. And so then just enriching that with good books and good text and good ideas and images and just all of the things that are worthy of studying, just adding that into those things that I already considered to be of high value, really just made so much sense to me. When I would say my daughter was around second grade when I found out about the Charlotte Mason method. And from that point on, we've just continued to grow the adults in our home and the children in our home, because even the idea of narration, on Sundays after church, we narrate what we learned, and it just really has changed our whole family. So yeah, we've definitely grown. We've changed quite a bit through home education. I didn't love nature. Naturally, like I grew up in Chicago and Miami. And so it was like not a huge part of the way that I was educated. I was always in a high academic environment. My parents would put me in those rigorous academic programs. And so in order to have more computer training or more writing practice, they would pull me out of art classes and out of music classes. And so I really entered into adulthood with very little understanding or appreciation for those things. And so it was one of the things I implemented last into our homeschool was nature study and poet study, because I was like, well, I don't know anything about this. And the way that it's taught through the method of just exposing yourself to it versus teaching it taught me a lot about it as well. And I really learned to enjoy it. And now memorizing poetry along with my kids is one of my favorite parts of our school year. I have my own nature journal. They'll come and ask me questions and I'm like, hold on, this bird, and I love it as much as they love it. And I love that they've started their lives appreciating it. Because I can't wait to see what that looks like when they're adults. But yeah, we've grown so much as an entire family, just through home education history. It was my least favorite subject. It's now my favorite subject, all those kinds of things that, we all have, all the things we thought we couldn't do that we learned to do through home education, and learn to appreciate ourselves. I mean, it's just such a beautiful experience.
Well, I'm already hearing so much joy and delight, the things you love about homeschooling. Do you have anything else that's sort of your favorite thing, or like one thing that really stands out to you about homeschooling?
Yes, I definitely nature study. I know I mentioned that already. And history, like I said, it was just something that I I did not appreciate. It was taught in a dry way. And now it's something that you'll hear my kids will play games like they're in history because it's just something that has come alive in our home. Handcrafts, something that I never thought I would ever be able to teach to my kids. I've learned with them. Those have become some of my favorite things now to participate in with them. And something that I think I will, continue on even when our homeschooling days are over. I think there's so many new things I've dabbled in for a year or two here or there with the kids that I'm like, I can't wait to explore this more. Or I told my husband last year that I was like, I would really like a homeschooling retreat where you just take the kids away for a week and I stay here and homeschool myself with all the things we have because I really love our beeswax candles and I really love our watercolor kits. And I just want to sit in the homeschool room and be a student myself. I want to read these books and do these things. And so, yeah, it really is a beautiful thing when you kind of customize it to your own family and you grow with it. I think it can be such a beautiful experience for both parents and children.
I love getting to still be all the learning nerd person, getting
Yeah.
to read all the good books and getting excited about the things we're learning. And yes, I was thinking about that actually as our oldest graduated last spring. And I
I
still
saw that.
have, I still have a third grader. So I still have a ways to go in my homeschooling journey. But I was thinking to myself, I was like, man, when I retire from homeschooling, I'm going to have to find other kids who want to come over and do poetry with me. And what am I
I
going to,
know.
I'm going to have morning time by myself. Maybe I can rope my husband into doing it with me.
A morning basket just for you.
That's right. Well, these are all really wonderful parts of homeschooling. And I'm so thankful for these joyful things that we get to experience as moms. But there are some challenges that we all face. And I always like asking moms, especially on this podcast, what are some of the challenges you face and how you've sought to overcome them? Because I think there can be this idea that we paint a rosy picture,
Yes.
especially on the internet, right? We come and do an interview, we do a video, and it's all like, look at these wonderful parts of homeschooling. And those
Right.
are true. But it's also helpful for people to know they're not alone. So what are some of the challenges that you guys have faced and how do you work through those challenges?
Yes, I completely agree. I think it can be really hard to only hear the good things when you're in a difficult season. And um, I've had I've had my share of really tough seasons just outside of our home, things affecting us at home. And then I've just had struggles with consistency or motivation on my own. So like an internal struggle that affects our homeschool. And I think that in both of those types of difficult seasons, my biggest challenge is taking myself seriously, trusting myself, trusting my own consistency, and that I can do it. And that if it's not a Monday morning start, if it's a Wednesday that we're getting back on track, like I can do it. I can trust myself. I think that, I want everything to fall into place perfectly. It's kind of like the whole analogy of like, so I'll start next Monday. I'll start next Monday with working out or eating healthy. It's the same with homeschooling. I can fall into that rut of, oh, I kind of bombed Monday and Tuesday. We'll start fresh next week. Or are my kids going to take me seriously if I say on Wednesday that we're starting a new book for the week or things like that? I can get in my own head, and I can really sabotage the whole thing. It's rarely the kids, it's typically me when it comes down to our consistency, our motivation. My kids and most homeschooling kids, I would assume, have not known much else other than this. And so it's not really like they're not motivated. I think that they know what the expectations are. And my kids, at least, are very consistent on their own. If I'm not doing morning basket, I often find them finishing their independent work because they know there's still work to be done. It's usually me, it's my motivation. And to speak to that, I think to boil that down a little bit more, one of the bigger issues when it comes down to that is taking care of myself, feeding myself, like literally physically feeding myself. That's one of our biggest problems in our whole homeschool, is that I didn't eat or I haven't been eating or nourishing my body, taking care of myself spiritually, emotionally, and just getting in a little exercise and sunshine. Those are all things that I neglect first, thinking I need to meet these other needs. We've got to get morning basket going. I've got to make some photocopies. And yet when I've woken up and read my Bible and had some eggs, then our days run much more smoothly, whether or not I've made a photocopy. So I think the biggest challenges kind of lie there with me, my motivation, how I'm feeling, and if I'm taking care of myself. It's a struggle, and it seems counterproductive sometimes to say we're starting in an hour, mom needs to go for a run and eat, some breakfast, but it really does change the whole day.
A little protein does a lot for mom.
I know.
Sometimes I think, like you were saying, oh, well, they take me seriously if we started on Wednesday instead of Monday, or we get these like weird ideas in our head. Well, I bombed Monday, Tuesday, so I guess the rest of the week is a wash. These sort of weird stories we tell ourselves. And I was talking to Cindy Rollins many years ago now, a previous guest on the podcast. And I know one of the things she has said before is people will be like, trying to find this perfect book list. Like they want to read aloud just the right book to their kids or whatever. And she's like, I just tell people, like, pick up a book and just start reading it. That's the most important thing. Don't get hung up by trying to start at the perfect time or like the right day of the week or the right book or the perfect curriculum. Just pick something up and do it. And I think that simple thing we actually do is so valuable. It's so much better than trying to do something really fancy.
I agree completely.
Well, Abby, what are some of the ways that you have found you have a wide age range of kids like I do? What are some of the ways that you have found that you can really support community for yourself as mom and also for your kids?
Well, I will say a little, I'll just throw this out there at the beginning of this. I have a really large homeschooling community in my town. And so I just want to kind of qualify what I say by sharing that first, because it's not hard to go very far in our town without finding a homeschooling group or homeschoolers. If you were to go to the playground around here at any time of day during the week and you see kids, you can assume that they're homeschooling families. We have a really large homeschooling community here. But even with that, it's finding the people who encourage you as a parent, who kind of follow along in the same way that you do if you're wanting to do community together consistently and not just have coffee or not just meet at the playground. And so early on, I was in a Sunday school class and we had some young families in there. And it was right after that whole story that I recently shared about, pulling my daughter from the school and wanting to try preschool at home. We still hadn't kind of told anyone that that's what our plan was. And we were in a Sunday school class and it was getting ready to be back to school. And one of the moms said, oh yeah, well, we're actually going to homeschool. And I remember looking at my husband like, that family said they're going to homeschool. And then another mom said, oh, you're homeschooling? We're homeschooling too. And I was just like, we're homeschooling too. And then it was just like all these families all of a sudden were like, we are. And so naturally we thought, well, we need to form a whole plan then, because that's what young homeschooling moms do, is they think we need a whole structure now to make this work. And so we got together and we planned field trips and, park days and themed holiday gatherings. And you're going to take Valentine's Day and you're going to take the Christmas party, and we have to have a craft and a snack and a da. But that first year was, very structured. But as years went on, we really just became support for one another. We got our kids together on a monthly basis and encouraged one another. Even though we were all kind of doing our own thing, we had a home base. And we did that until our older kids all reached about middle school. And that is when everybody kind of picked a lane. I think it's probably a fairly common thing to find community more easily when elementary schoolers are involved, because once you get to middle and high school, you've got a plan and a purpose and a mission, and you're going in a certain direction. And it's really hard to adapt that to any other type of situation. So you have a lot of CC, Classical Conversations homeschoolers, and we had some Charlotte Mason homeschoolers and some kids who are pursuing dual enrollment, and some families who are going a very like a Becca type of approach, and all the we just couldn't make our schedules work anymore. And so we all kind of went different directions. And while we're all really close as moms still, and our kids still hang out, now there are some of them who are driving. And so we're kind of approaching those days too. So our kids get together still, and the moms are still in touch with one another. We no longer get together for history, or we no longer get together for holiday parties, now that they're older. And so that was a wonderful season, but I did find myself at that same place again that I did at the beginning of our homeschooling journey, which was who are our people going to be in this season? And so I started a Charlotte Mason co-op, a very simple, very relaxed enrichment type of co-op, so that it didn't dictate our curriculum choices during the week. We only meet twice a month, and it's just for things like book club and apologetics debates and things like that. Very simple, enjoyable things that enrich what we're already doing at home. And that has grown over the last few years. I started that for middle and high schoolers, but if you have younger siblings, they're welcome to join, and there's something for them as well. But we really wanted to emphasize being a support for Charlotte Mason parents in middle and high school, because that's, I would say, and not to make this too Charlotte Mason of a podcast episode, but I would say that that's a really tough season for a lot of Charlotte Mason families, because you really have to be committed to the method, especially when you get to middle and high school, because that's where you're saying, no, I don't want to use a curriculum for this. I want to read a good book about this. And no, I don't want to have a textbook for this. We want to study this through living books. And so you get to a point where you're like, oh man, this is where the rubber meets the road. And so I wanted to create some kind of supportive community for those specific families who were in the middle and high school years. And we started out with just 5 families, and now we've doubled. We're going into our 3rd year, and it's growing. Each year, each month, we have new families visiting, and some of them just stay when they come visit. So it's been really great. And I am now an advocate for, if you don't find what you're looking for, then you can create it, because I was going to change the way that we homeschooled so we could find community. And my husband was just like, a couple of people, why don't you just start something? And I was like, why didn't I think of that? So I think that, you don't have to change the way you're doing things. Nobody has to tell you what to do when you're homeschooling. That's the beauty of home education, is you do what you know is best for your family. And so if you can't find what you're looking for, you can always start something.
Do you have any videos or resources where you kind of help people who might think, oh, this sounds great, but I don't know where to start? Have you?
I do have 2 videos that I know for sure on my YouTube channel. One was called, I think it was called Tea Talk or Let's Talk. And I started a co-op. And then I did more recently, 2 years later, I did a follow-up on just, the things we've tweaked over the years, and as we've grown, how we've adapted. And then there's also, I don't remember what the website's called, but Simply Charlotte Mason, that company purchased the Charlotte Mason in Community website, which was already a website where you could find other Charlotte Mason co-ops, but they kind of brought it up to modern times and added new ones and took away some that weren't any longer meeting any longer. So there is a website for that where you can find Charlotte Mason co-ops if you're looking for one specifically, to that method.
Okay, great. And maybe I will look for those videos, or if you can send me the links, I'll include
will.
those in the show notes for the episode. Well, let's talk a little bit about the logistics of family life. You have 5 children like I do, a fairly wide age range as I do. And that can be a joy and a challenge, both at the same time often. So what are some of your best strategies for meeting the needs of all of your children during the week? I think that's one of the most common questions I hear is how do you meet everyone's needs when you're homeschooling so many children with such a wide age range?
Right. First of all, you can't like by the grace of God, everyone will be okay. I have a girlfriend who always says, you won't be so perfect a parent that your kids won't need Jesus. So I like that. That's my motto. Grace will cover us there. But on a logistical, in a logistical way, I plan our school days to where I work with my younger kids and my older kids are doing their independent work. And then we swap and I have my younger kids doing their independent work and then they're kind of just released to play. And I have a little bit longer to work with my older children. And we also have family style learning because that's really important to me. That kind of more meets my needs than theirs, but I need them all around the table still. So we have a good system in play where we meet together. The older ones are dismissed to work on things while I work with my littles, and then we swap. We also have a baby in the house, so her needs trump all at any point in the day. That's just how it works. So it is, when we adapt it year to year, month to month, if need be, we're always trying to tweak it to make it work best for everyone. This current homeschooling year, we have something really fun going on where I'm taking my older ones to a local coffee shop on Friday afternoons, and we're sitting down and planning out their next week and giving them a little bit of control over their schedule, giving them some time to work independently out of the home. I think that's a good skill to have. I do a coffee shop with my laptop and I'm so distracted. And so my husband works there all the time and he's able to focus. So I think it's kind of a fun thing to teach them too. So that also kind of pulls them out and gives them a little something that they need as older kids as well. But then in an emotional way, and just as a family, I found that my teenagers, and I'm sure you'd agree with me here, need as much from me emotionally as my toddlers do. It's a very important season to not neglect, especially if your kids are just agreeable. I have very agreeable older children who, if I'm busy and they want to talk and I'm like, hold on, after I'm done doing the dishes or after I'm done cooking, they'll be like, okay. And then they won't come back. They just know I was too busy. And I don't want to overlook this season and their needs in this season. And so it's a lot of being stretched and being refined, similar to how it was when I had a few toddlers at the same time. It's a lot of relying on grace and a lot of doing it with a lack of rest because everyone needs something. And these ones more likely need you at 10 p.m. and this one more likely needs you at 5:30 a.m. And so it's a lot of that. It's a lot of allowing the Lord to sustain me, working as a team with my husband. And again, back to my own needs, not neglecting myself and eating and getting my needs met. But I also have to learn to advocate for myself and tell him, I'm really tired. Can you drive this kid to dance or karate? They just need to talk. They're very chatty today and I can tell they need someone. So I can't do it. Can you? And just being aware of all of those things, because it's very easy to overlook those types of needs.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting to see how the older children, you would think, oh, it's easier, they can buckle themselves. They're so much more independent in so many ways, which is a joy. but then the discussions take every bit as much emotionally out of you, right? These are deeper issues a lot of
Oh
times,
yeah.
or deeper questions, and they don't ever seem to happen right at the time where it fits into the schedule. So I think
Yeah.
it's so important for us to remember that that's why we're doing this human, this
Yeah.
soul, this eternal soul, this
Yes.
person that we love. That's why we're doing all of this. It's not to check off our lists, but to take those opportunities. And that doesn't mean sometimes we can't say to them, this is really important and I need to have this conversation with you. I'm so glad you want to talk about it, and we're going to have to reschedule it for another
Yes.
time. That's important too. Like you were saying, mom needs to eat. Sometimes mom needs to sleep, because if I
Yeah.
don't go to sleep, you won't have a very pleasant day tomorrow. But yeah, it's such a
Yeah.
joy. I think that just prioritizing that relationship time is so
Yeah.
important. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're right. It doesn't always happen at the right time of day. And I'd even add to that, it seems to always happen at the wrong time of day. It's when I'm cooking dinner, which is like the permanent witching hour that never goes away. Like I'm always frenzied at that time of day. Or it's after I've gotten everyone else to bed and I'm like ready to be done for the day, that it's like, hey mom, guess who said this at this point? I'm like, oh no. So what? Yes, I want to watercolor with you right now at 11. I was dreaming of that, so it's funny. It's always the wrong time, but it's always right on time because it's what they need.
That's right. And that's the day that God has given us.
Yeah.
Okay, well, my baby is now 8, which just is crazy to me. But you
Mm,
still have littles. You're homeschooling with babies and toddlers even now.
yes.
It's been a little while since I have been in that stage. So I thought it would be good to kind of talk about that issue too. So, or not issue, but that
Well, it can be an
situation.
issue.
Imagine you're talking to a mom who is tired and she feels like all she can do
Yeah.
is like feed the baby, get the diapers changed, wait,
Hmm.
where did the toddler go? What did they get into now? And then she's looking around thinking, but I'm supposed to also be homeschooling
Right.
these older kids. So, what kind of tips or encouragement would you have for that mom?
I think that it's really important to balance flexibility with a little bit of self discipline, because you don't know which of those two things you'll need more of each day. I think sometimes you just need grace to cover the day, and you just need to say, my kids are learning something, even if it's just what to expect when they have kids one day. And, we'll put on a documentary today, or they'll go outside and play, or, they'll just get their chores done for the day, and we will all make it through a day we haven't slept, together. We'll put on some worship music, and we'll get through this day together. But then there's some days where, and I'm speaking, of my own experience, where I have a few of those days in a row where it's like, yeah, the baby's teething or blah blah blah, and then I'll be like, wait, she's actually not teething right now. Actually, I just have no motivation today. Today we need to really be a little more disciplined and get things done, and to recognize that those days you don't know what each day is going to hold. And so it looks a little funny. Some days you're not doing much, and some days you're like, today there are no excuses. Today we really should be getting some things done. And just to be aware of that. I know that I had a few years in a row of having babies and toddlers, and then we had more of a gap before our younger two. And so um, I kind of had somebody come along and pluck me out of that season after a few years, being like, well, one day we'll do this, one day we'll do that. And then I was like, wait, we're kind of out of that season now. I'm still in that season mentally, but we're not really there. And then I also have the same friend who will say, hey, you need to be easier on yourself. You're being really tough on yourself, and you haven't slept in a year. So you need good friends to edify and encourage you. You need to be aware of just what days need some grace and some extra rest, and what days are like, okay, we're going to get a reading lesson done today, because we really do have a little bit of time to get that done right now. So, and again, like I said, I've done this a few times. We have our fifth right now, who's 1, and my kids survived it. They're doing just fine. There are ebbs and flows in a homeschooling year, or not even just in a homeschooling year, but across the whole experience as a whole. There are some seasons where you're homeschooling really diligently and well, and everything's working out. And there are some seasons where, whether it's because there's a baby or a toddler or an illness or, grief, we're also in a grief season, you kind of pause for a little bit and then you pick up again later. And I've seen my kids come out on the other side of those seasons and they're doing just fine. It did not delay anything. They're doing well. They're right where I would want them to be, and they're thriving, and maybe thriving without a level of anxiety that comes from having to push through those harder seasons. So they've learned to adapt. And I think that as adults, they'll have a good foundation and understanding for when to give themselves grace. So if that's all they learn in these baby and toddler years, then that's good enough for me.
Abby, one of the things I loved about what you were just saying is you weren't saying, okay, now here are your 3 steps to successfully, homeschooling with a baby and a toddler.
Yeah.
Just everybody
Yeah.
check these boxes and you'll be fine. A
Right.
lot of it, that's just not the way life works, right? It
Right.
was wisdom, discernment, being able to see, okay, this day we have this amount of energy or this opportunity, and this day we don't. Being willing to be patient with ourselves, patient with our situations, but then relying on the grace of God as well in the lives of our children, to know that if we aren't perfectly meeting every need every day, that God is there meeting their needs every day. And over the course of time, the bigger picture, maybe one day feels like a bit of a wash, but over the course of time, when you have that perspective, you're really able to do what needs to be done. I think that's an encouragement, because I think everybody wants this quick, easy fix. How do I homeschool with a baby and a toddler? Please.
Right.
No, just give me the ticket, give me the pill, and I'll just take that in the morning, drink it with my water, with my breakfast, and it'll be fine. And that's just not the way it works.
No.
Yeah.
No, it's not. And we want that with everything. How do I homeschool with this or with that? Or how do I homeschool? It's grace. It's grace, and it's Jesus sustaining us through all of the different seasons.
Oh, for sure. That's why I tell my kids, Mom needs Jesus too. We all need Jesus. Yeah. Well, one of those things, though, that never seems to go away, regardless of the season or the ages of our children, is this thing that they still want to eat all the time. It's not enough to just homeschool them. But, we've all heard the joke about homeschoolers being hobbits. They also want to eat all the time. So how do we keep everybody fed, Abby, while we're doing this homeschooling thing?
This is another place where having toddlers and teenagers at the same time is very funny. It's it's very similar. Everyone just is crabby and needs food.
So many snacks.
Yeah, it is just, we're just throwing yogurt sticks at people all the time. Those yogurt tubes, come on, guys, let's finish this math lesson. No, well, for having a large family, it's a lot of bulk cooking when I can. That is really helpful. I think the hardest for me is not necessarily the snacks or the dinners, but the breakfasts and the lunches, because that's right when I need to be doing other things, versus dinner time is okay, I'm cooking dinner and everyone knows that, it's dinner time. It's not also homeschooling time. So breakfasts and lunches are the more difficult ones for me to manage. And so when I'm making breakfast burritos, I just make enough to freeze some, that's helpful. When I'm making muffins, I double the recipe and have some for tomorrow, that's really helpful. It's finding those little pockets of opportunity. And like I said, just some bulk cooking. This week alone, I made a bunch of pizza dough, and I just froze them into mini pizza crusts so the kids could make their own pizzas one day this week. We did some breakfast burritos and some muffins, things like that, just as I'm cooking it, doubling it. Really helps when I'm in a pinch, because we do get into boxed mac and cheese seasons where nobody wants to see it again for a year because we had it 6 days in a row. So that's the more difficult for me, are the breakfasts and the lunches. And then also we do have a little bit of a system, I would say. In the afternoons, usually around 2 or 3, when our school day's done and the kids' chores are done for the day, I will put out a community snack. It'll be some cheddar bunnies and some pretzels and popcorn mixed together in a big bowl, put it on the table with a little clam shell of blueberries, and I'm snack, and there's something there. And that's just a time of day where I know everybody needs something before everyone melts down. And it's kind of the last thing that I do before everyone starts getting ready for their afternoon of dance or karate or violin or whatever it is. It's kind of our last community meal before dinner. And then in the morning time, they often grab a cheese stick or a yogurt tube or an apple or something. And we kind of joke that we call it our math snack. I don't know if it's anxiety about math or what, but every time, no matter what time of morning, I'm like, okay, time to do math. They're always like, can I have a snack? And so I'm like, it's time for our math snack. And everyone just grabs something on their own. So it's like a mid-morning, little something, and then an afternoon something to get us through the rest of the day and kind of cut cost on those prepackaged snacks that are so easy, but really not cost effective when you have a family of 7. Because I think we would probably go through like a whole sack of those individual bags of chips in a day if that was what the option was. So just kind of having a little system helps. And then those are the things they can grab when they're heading out the door for something, stick it in their karate bag or something like that.
Those are some great strategies and tips. I love the idea of a math snack. I think we should just have like a snack for math, snack for history.
Yes.
Just snacks, all through the day. Are there any other kind of logistical strategies that help with other things that like with a big family, like laundry or just sort of keeping up with the household stuff that is just a part of our regular life?
I mean, it's a lot of just doing what you can when you can. I think when you're homeschooling, it's one thing that I know my husband and I would kind of get into this discussion in the first few years of homeschooling where I'm like, I can't do it all. I don't know how to do it all. And he's like, I don't need you to do it all. And I'm like, but I don't know which thing to do, housework or homeschooling. I don't know which thing. They're both really important. And that's tough. And, some years when my kids were really little, we would just do a 4-day school week and Mondays were my cleaning day. And I would recover our house from the weekend and get us set up for the week. And that was a great season. And that was really helpful when I had younger kids. Now, most of our kids are older and their actual chores actually do something, like when they're little and their chores are the dishes, it's like there's water everywhere and they washed 4 dishes and now they're singing and they're playing in the sink. And that's not really helpful, but they're still like learning how to do something. So, it'll pay off in the end. We've gotten to that season where those things have paid off now and everyone's actually accomplishing something helpful around the house. And so I have their chores. We call them contributions because you're contributing to our household. That's something that I learned from the 1 + 1 + 1 = 1 blog way back when. I would say that was like 2010, before homeschooling YouTube and homeschooling podcasts and homeschooling help was really at hand. There were a handful of blogs that were really helpful for me, and hers was one of them, and she called them contributions. And I just thought that's such a beautiful way to describe the family operating together and doing household chores. And so they have their morning contributions that help set us up for the day, which are things like making their own beds, tidying up the main areas that we're working in. And then they have afternoon contributions that feel more like chores would, chores from when I was a kid, which is like, we're going to wash the dishes for the day, or we're going to wipe down the windowsills, or we're going to clean the bathroom, things that don't make sense to what we're doing for the day. So those things get done in the afternoon, and that helps the general upkeep of our home. And then, like I said, just doing what you can when you can that makes the most sense. I mop on Fridays because it's our family movie night and the kids sit on the floor. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to mop on Fridays because people are going to be on the floor and I want to know it's clean. So it's become habit. Or we go in the pool on Saturdays and it's the day where when we're all drying off, we all pick up the patio because there's always water, sparkling water cans and things like that. So just those things, just kind of fitting it in where it makes the most sense and not trying to create this overbearing cleaning schedule or household management schedule that you are also going to feel like another thing that you're missing the mark on, or you have to answer to this other schedule that's kind of bearing down on you.
I love that because so often it can feel just like even when you've come up with your own planning, your own planning
Hmm.
routine or your own chore list, it's like, wow, here's one more thing I'm not doing that
Yes.
I'm failing in this one more area, not meeting my goals. And just instead taking the idea, okay, well, like when is a thing that fits just naturally in the schedule, like the mopping on the Friday before everyone's sitting on
Yeah.
the floor, like something that's already going to fit into the schedule you have instead of creating an artificial routine. I love that. That's a really great tip. Well, Abby, here at the end, I'm going to ask you the questions that I ask all my guests. And the first is just, what are you personally reading lately? As many things as are on your stack as you'd like to share.
I know. I know. I'm like in 16 books at a time always. But the one that stands out to me right now is I'm currently reading Having a Merry Heart in a Martha World. It's a book and a Bible study. And it's been a long time since I've done one of these, like read along and answer the questions in a workbook type of studies. And it's been really encouraging. It's a great book just for this season of what's it look like to do the next right thing? How do I also do this, but with a perspective of worshiping God and not, just trying to have control over things? And so that has been a really big encouragement to me, a little convicting, a little stinging here and there. But it's also been really practical with giving you some tools for how to manage certain expectations a little better. And also has just been speaking to my heart.
That sounds really good. I'll have to add that to my list,
Yes.
my ever growing list.
Yes, always. There's always room for one more.
Well, you've shared so many wonderful tips already, but if you had to pick just one, your best tip for helping the homeschool day run smoothly, what would you share?
Oh man, that's hard because it's like, yeah, there's a lot of things, but I will say my husband and I were just talking about this recently. I would say that as difficult as it can seem to fit into your schedule or as unrealistic as it may feel with the kids running around and tasks at hand, starting my day in the Word is really a game changer because you're going to start your day with something. You're going to start your day with social media, or you're going to start your day panicking and rushing around to get household chores done, or you're going to start your day with something. So making it something that's worthwhile and that's going to fill you up and give you something, some sort of direction for the rest of the day is really, really important. And I know that there are seasons where it's really hard. I know that, it's hard to do it with a grabbing baby. I'm in a season where my Bible pages are wrinkled because her hands are always at them and they've got some Cheeto on them. But it's still really important. And we have tools to utilize when it's not an option to actually sit down with a pretty cup of tea in our Bible. The Bible app will read it to you. And sometimes I'm listening to it while I'm taking a shower in the morning, or I'm listening to it in the car driving to a dentist appointment at 8 a.m. But making that a habit to start my day with scripture has really helped so much. And the days where I don't, I notice it big time in my attitudes, in my motivation, because either way, somebody has to do the dishes, right? Somebody has to homeschool the kids, but it's whether or not I'm doing it with a heart posture of wanting to do all things as unto the Lord, or whether I'm doing that because it has to be done and all these people. And there's a big difference in my my motivation when I'm not spending time in the Word.
Such a good reminder. I think it was Spurgeon. I could be misattributing this quote. But I think it was Spurgeon who said, I like to start my day with an hour of devotion, prayer and in the Word. And on really busy days, I spend two. Which
Yes,
seems
it's so true.
counterproductive, right? Because we're like, oh no, on the busy days, we can like let that go because we've
Right.
got so much else to get done. But it's
Yeah,
such a good reminder that really the most productive thing that we can do is to spend time with the Lord. It affects everything else we do.
it does. Every single thing is affected.
Abby, where can people find you all around the internet?
Not very many places, but I do have a YouTube channel. It is called Rooted in Rest. I have Instagram. I'm active on Instagram and YouTube most often. Um, And then also I am a contributor for Made to Homeschool. So I do contribute over there monthly, an article or a video or a hangout or a seminar or something like that. I've really enjoyed that as well. And that is mostly where you will find me, where I'm most active and consistent.
Well, I will have those links in the show notes for this episode over at humilityanddoxology.com. Thank you to everyone who has listened or watched. If you enjoyed this episode and were encouraged, I would love for you to share it with a friend. Make sure you're subscribed in your podcast app or on YouTube so you don't miss the rest of the Homeschool Conversations series. And Abby, it was really great to get a chance to chat with you today. Thank you for talking with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me and just giving me some good thoughts to remind myself why I love homeschooling and what's most important. So thank you for having me. I really enjoyed this.